recording. Okay. Okay, good. Okay, so now I want to start the meeting now. Okay, good evening, everyone. Thank you all for joining us. I'm Anna Ying, as most of you already know, the host tonight. And tonight we have the honor to have 4 award-winning Canadian poets. And Allan Briesmaster, Kate Marshall Flaherty, Kateri, Lanza, and Richard Greene. And they all will join me to share the poems from Mirrors and Windows, and also their own poem. And I also want to thank them and the League of Canadian Poets for the funding. And we are all members from the league, right? And tonight, our co-host is CPAC. The name is former Chinese Professionals Association of Canada. And I want to thank them for their support. Before we begin, I want to invite the Executive Director of CPAC, Andy Si, to say a few words.
Well, thank you, Anna. I'm really pleased to be here at this lovely event, and I feel honored to be among the accomplished poets here. I don't get to go to events like this very often, so it's a pleasure to be here. Anna was a former recipient of our Professional Achievement Award for her poetry achievements. So it's always good to be here with Anna to support her, but more importantly, to support this event. I think it's really commendable that you pursue your literary interests and present events like this to enrich the cultural life of our community. I sometimes wonder, if people spend 1/10 of their time on the cell phone and spend that time on poetry reading or learning or writing, we probably would have much better developed students and more civilized adults. So maybe we should, aim at that, to talk to the schools and to make Toronto a more culturally diverse and enrich the community for us to live. So with that, I'll just sit back and enjoy some poetry and have a good time. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Andy, for your support and for your team's support. And wonderful, yes. We hope you can co-host more events, especially for poetry, right, in the future. Okay, now we will like to offer a land acknowledgement, right, and land acknowledgement. On September 30, Aurora Public Library hosted a great event for Mirrors and Windows. And I really like their land acknowledgement. So here, I want to use the same land acknowledgement for tonight's event. We are all immigrants and children of immigrants to Canada. We gratefully acknowledge the original caretakers of this land. We acknowledge the philosophy behind the dish with one spoon treaty. This contract binds people on this land to share with their labors so that we may all have enough. There is one dish, one spoon, and no knife. In that spirit, we honor all who came before us, our own ancestors, as well as all the indigenous caretakers, named and unnamed, recorded and unrecorded. So thank you. Yeah, this is our land acknowledgement as well. Okay, now we will begin with our 4 guests reading. So each of them will share one poem from Mirrors and Windows, and also they will share their own, and then I have a short discussion with them. Then I will read one poem from Mirrors and Window of my own, and then we will open up the floor for questions. And so if you have questions, you can put in the chat, or you can raise your hand later when after the 4 poets reading, then you can raise your hand than to ask the question. So now we will start with Allan Briesmaster. Okay, now I will remove the spotlights. Okay, I will remove the spotlight. Okay, okay. First, we will start with Allan Briesmaster. Allan Briesmaster. Okay, let me quickly and is a poet, editor, and publisher. He has now, I believe, 10 poetry collection published, right? Allan also has read his poetry, gave talks, and hosted poetry reading events and book launches across Canada. And more than 10 years ago, and let me just add Allan as oh my God, Allan. Oh, sorry. Some people. Okay. Oh, wait a moment. Okay. Wait a moment. Just. Okay. 10 years ago, like more than 10 years ago, I met Allan through the Ontario Poetry Society, then got to know him more at the annual meeting of the League of Canadian Poets. And at that time, he was a Toronto representative, and he encouraged me to organize poetry events for the league. So Allan helped a lot of people, and Allan has made a great contributions to the league, and he has been awarded as the lifetime member, right, Allan?
Yes, life member.
Life member. Okay, good. So now let's hear Allan reading. Okay.
I see one more person just came in. That's great.
Yes. So our co-hoster can help to admin the audience. Okay. Allan,
Okay.
could you? Yeah.
Anna, thank you very much for organizing this event. And I want to thank you too for all of the work that went into this very beautiful book, full of wonderful poetry and translations. I will read the shorter of the two poems of mine that are in this collection. This poem, which I think I can show you here on the screen.
Yes.
It's called Jazz Quartet, and you'll see that it's in 4 short segments, and it's a celebration of a wonderful performance I heard many years ago. Each of the little segments in the poem represents one of the instruments in the quartet. Jazz Quartet. From the dark solar mouth, a torrent of cries breaks in rainbows. Soft freight slams the night. Wheel clash, pistons carom thunder over skin. Plucked throbs arc across the bridge of the blood. Outwalk all bars. One hand grabs the ground. Another hammers embers into stars. And I'm going to read 2 more poems. This is by far the longest one. It's from my selected and new poems called The Long Bond, which came out 2 years ago, also from Guernica Editions, the publisher of Mirrors and Windows. And I chose this poem particularly in connection with Mirrors and Windows because it's my tribute to one of my favorite classical poets, Du Fu, who comes from the Tang Dynasty in China. His dates are 712 to 770. And I, of course, only know his work through various translations, but happily, I think there are some good English translations available, multiple translations of the same poem, which is always very helpful. Anyway, this is my poem of tribute to Du Fu. Such disparate worlds, but you call far across the abysses. from frail hut after hut of right words, begun in a once grand society, bled by insane, ceaseless wars, worn down, bowed as you were in ill health, withdrawn beside the long waters under desolate cirrus, one moon that even so gave like an ablution your constellated lines, their fluent image of being. Poor and obscured, seldom back home or for long at each refuge. In threadbare cold, in sadness, the fleeting reprieve with a friend, the helpless compassion, bald grief, your cry still issues its power to pierce the dust laid down over ages of collapsing kingdoms, ruins, perennial guises of greed, wrath, and pride, the murk also of the clumsy translations, to glass and distill and bring near the most remote visions for those who sip your moonlit wine as they rock slowly there in the thin but miraculous boat of the brain that slips past blithe or brutish denial and scorn of the historic warnings, decline of mere solidarity in a thoughtful existence, of care, you who breathe improbable brotherhood, past every mask of despair. And finally, a shorter poem, and this is from my newest book that came out just this summer called Wind For from Ecstasis Editions. It's a poem about trying to connect with people who are very different from ourselves. It's called Exchanging. When two quite different people clash in ignorance about each other, seeing next to nothing of the other in themselves, they both diminish. Without any giving way in patient openness with fair regard, they amplify a selfish fear and hurt and harden. Then why demand that others take us merely as we presume to be, or that they mimic us? The more we refuse gifts of dissonance, the less we are. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Wait a moment. Let me add you to, okay. Oh, yeah. Okay. Yes, Allan. So thank you. Yeah, your poem connect to us. And also you choose the poem is also with Chinese culture behind, right? And you have another poem is in Mirrors and Windows. It's Ask. And the poem Ask is also, it reminded me about the Chinese traditional ancient poet Qu Yuan. Qu Yuan has a long poem called Asking Heaven. So it also asks about what's the problem, the concern about the issue, the war and the chaos and the disasters, and not for chaos and constructions. So your poem asks, could you summarize a little bit about your ask?
Well, the poem is a series of questions that are kind of paradoxical, really impossible to answer probably, and ultimately it just asks really that we be concerned about what's happening to the environment, the ecosphere, even though it may seem impossible to deal with the problem. I think that's kind of summarizes what my sense of it is anyway.
Yes, yes. For me, I understand your ask also is a human overdevelopment, right? The make
Yes.
all the damages, right, for the
Yes.
earth. Yeah. So anyway, and you have read that poem. I use the screen and to show the poem like in the book what it look like, and the you centralize this poem, right? And I know jazz quarter is very popular in Western culture, the musical form, right? So yeah, I
Oh,
like
it's a
to.
musical group. Yeah, in this case, there's a saxophone player in the first segment, and then what they call the rhythm section. You know, the drums, bass, and piano, which is, yeah, it's a very common configuration in
Yeah, and
the culture. Yeah.
yeah, and as you can see, everyone can see you use very powerful and vivid image to paint the sound, to paint the music, right? So that's why I choose this poem. And also I choose Ask poem, that poem, because I really feel the human, like this issue uh, we want. It connect us, right? For the whole global issue. It connect us to make everyone need to be worried about. So I chose this poem. And do you have any uh, any plan to write some poems for Chinese music?
Oh, oh goodness. No, I don't think of doing my poems with music. Maybe because I'm vain enough to think that poems have a lot of music in them to start with, and but I admire musicians who allow the poet to have space and don't, you know, if they do accompany the voice, that they don't overlay it or distract from it, but supplement it. And I know that you've been involved in poets having their work set to music and actually sung by you know, an operatic type of singer. And I guess that would be quite a compliment to me, but something I don't really aspire to. I like to feel that my poems are playing the music of the English language anyway. Whether that's conceded, at least it's an ideal that I try to aspire to.
Okay. Okay, wonderful. Okay, now we will move to our next guest poet, and Kate Marshall Flaherty. Kate is a poet, editor, educator, and workshop mentor. Kate and I also know each other for many years, and mostly through the League of Canadian Poets. And Kate was Toronto representative, and I was Ontario representative. So we have like every year we have a monthly meeting, right? To discuss poetry, to discuss poetry events, how to promote poetry. And Kate did a lot of work for the league, and I remember you initiated the Poetry in Union project, right? Could you talk a little bit? This project is so good, and a lot of people like it. So could you talk a little bit?
Sure. First thing I'll say is I just was always impressed, Anna, with your ebullience and your enthusiasm about poetry. And whenever we had meetings, it was so fun to work with you because you were always bubbling over with joy. And as for the Poetry in Union, it was a really exciting program to bring poetry, you know, to public spaces. We thought, you know, let's get poetry out of classrooms and out of books and into public spaces. So it was a wonderful, we decided to do it on Valentine's Day because people often, you know, even people that are not poetic might write a love poem to their sweetheart, or they might buy flowers. So we would write spontaneous poems, as you know, for travelers. So we would have an intimate encounter with a traveler for a few minutes. They would tell us a little bit about their story. We would scribble it down and turn it into a poem. And in that way, we mirrored a traveler's story and read their own words back to them in a poem. It was very moving and very powerful. And it was so wonderful that we brought it online during COVID. And I just think it was an amazing way to sort of bring poetry to public spaces and make it an interactive event.
Yes, wonderful. I joined this year for the online one. Yeah, I'm hoping next year also doing online and in person both, right?
Yes,
So
yes,
then we can cover more people because some
yes.
people couldn't travel, right? So anyway, that's my suggestion.
I think, no, and the blessing of Zoom was that people from
Yeah,
further afield did get poems
yeah.
written. So, and it was fun to work with you last year. So
Okay.
that was
Yes.
exciting.
Okay. Kate also have published 10 poetry collections, and Kate will read one poem from Mirrors and Windows. So let's hear Kate.
Okay. And again, it is a beautiful book, and I'm honored to be in it. And the poem that I chose of my two is called Dragon Fruit. And I was at a dinner party where we had for the first time, it was a very fancy dinner party. So already I was a little ill at ease. And on a plate, they had a dragon fruit, which none of us Westerners had ever seen before. So it was interesting, the different reactions to eating something that was new and unknown. Dragon fruit. You are sitting at a I'll start again. Dragon fruit. You are sitting at a round table with 11 other guests, slicing gently into avocado and lime. There is wine. Some of you have broken bread. Music wafts from the outer room, mingled with smells of roasting yam and maple sugar. You choose the rustic olive loaf, tear off a crust, lick your fingers, their rosemary salt. On each plate, a slice of something milky clear, dots like poppy seeds or inner kiwi specks. It must be fruit, but it could be other, almost of the sea, sushi like anemone. Will it be saline or sweet? A wet drip sticks to your fingertip. Touch it to your tongue. Sweet water, heavy, a little scent of something from your grandma's rose kitchen. You are told this is Chinese dragon fruit, are shown the green scales with red tips on the tuberous shape, recalling a childhood puppet, amaryllis bulb, a Komodo dragon's poison claws, a little choke of fear in your throat. Look at the others' curiosity around the circle. Some slurp it up in sections, some decline. You imagine yellow rays of Asian splendor like the sun penetrating this delicacy. Possible only in this era, eating fruit out of season. You can ingest a patch of light from another corner of the world. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'm going to read another poem. And I have to say about the dragon fruit, it was such a fascinating new
We will
discovery for
talk,
me.
Kate,
Oh,
we
you
will
want?
talk later. I will share the
Okay.
screen. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
I want to finish, let you finish
Okay.
your reading. Yeah.
So I'm going to read part of a 4-part poem. I'll just read a little piece of it. This is the poem that was shortlisted at the Mitchell Prize. So I got to read it at the Aga Khan Museum, which was very moving to be in such a beautiful place for the first time in a long time in COVID. So I'll read the first part of a 4-part called Digging. And it's about my son going out to tree plant in the interior of BC. And that too was a new and completely unknown country he was going to visit. Where did it come from, this call to the interior? You will tree plant in BC forests, 4 hours by chopper from Prince George. The cork boots, belt and shovel, bandanas and bungees, tin stove and tarp all packed. The many days drive in an ancient van sealed with shiny hope and duct tape. Your puppy ebullience bounding over the phone, perhaps naive, perhaps full faith, both and. It is your own interior you want to dig into. 4 months without power, a phone, posts, or a store. 4 months of trekking deep into tree floor and spring flora. Steel spikes on your boots, hard resolve to stay, sweat, survive the entire time, learn thriving. Today, I bought you a simple bar of bio soap, pocket knife, tin cup. You'll grow a beard, have much to reflect on in your solitary tent, alone with your shovel and bag, no one to banter with but bears and the wind. You say you've been meditating daily as you tighten your core and build up your back strength. You want to take only what can fit in your pack. I see your shoulders lift, your mind learning to unburden. And I don't know if I have time, but I have a tiny little section from that same 4-part poem from this. It's just section 2. There is a root in your soft heart that fingers down deep. White filaments spread, green shoots unfurl like fiddlehead fern. Earth origins have spores and flowerings everywhere.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, I will share the screen now for Kate's poem. Okay, sorry. Wait a moment. Okay. Okay. So, and because, yeah, okay, wait a moment. So, like dragon fruit, we will talk about that, why I choose this poem. Kate, you have two poems in this book, and one is talking about the bridge, like a danceful bridge, right? It's beautiful and it's very sad as well. So, and this poem, I choose this poem is dragon fruit, as you mentioned. Okay, you can say it's a party, right? It's church potluck, right?
Yes, and it was fascinating that none of us had ever seen this before, and it was funny how many people were afraid to touch it and how others jumped in. And it was so fascinating to me. I actually brought it to a writing workshop once as a prompt, and it was amazing the imagination that people brought to writing about something they'd never eaten or seen before.
Yeah, you know, I want to, when I read that, immediately I thought about the wine and the bread. I thought about church, right? Church gathering. And also you put like 11 guests. 11 guests and add you is 12, right? And I think of the Last Supper, the Bible story.
Yes.
And then I thought, okay, dragon fruit is a kind of Eastern, like a tropical fruit, and it's a Chinese image dragon, right? So I wanted to see how you use this, how you face this kind of different fruit or different culture. So for me, I translated it because I really like you in here. You we can see different people react differently, right? Some people hesitate, some people embrace it, and some people, yeah, pound on it, imagine. And for you imagine some like horrible spike things, right? So I said, oh yeah, when we think of culture difference, right? When we think different culture, we face new culture, we have the fear, right, at the beginning first, right? And some people may be open to it, some people may be hesitate, right? And fear of it, right? So I think this poem in me, like in the end, really, you said the last. Could you read the last line, last stanza again?
Yes, because I do think that was sort of the universal. Possible only in this era, eating fruit out of season. You can ingest a patch of light from another corner of the world.
So yeah, so here lift up, right? It's like in this area, especially way in Canada, right? It's diversity, multicultural. So we are open, we are embrace, and we kind of can ingest all kinds of light, right, from the corner of the world, right? So yeah, I feel this is very, it's like not only discuss about the fruit. It's actually it's the culture behind. It's the attitude, right? Your faith, yeah, like your religion or belief, or like this all involved, even history involved there, right? So that's why I really wanted to translate this poem and show to others. Yeah. Okay. So yeah. Okay. So and okay, now we will move. Oh my God, I didn't share. When I share, I didn't use the recording, the sound, share the sound.
Yes, it's recording.
Yeah, but the share the sound is not sharing. Oh, anyway.
Oh.
Okay. Sometimes it's so difficult. We always need to remember. Okay. Okay. Now we will move on. Later, maybe I will make up. Okay. Now we will move on to Kateri Lanza. And Kateri, okay, let me read a little bit. Okay. Kateri is a poet, essayist, and reviewer. And she had two poetry collections, right? Two published, right?
Yes.
Good,
Yeah.
good. One of them was longlist for the 2018 Paternoster Memorial Award. And she is a mentor in the MF in English and in the field of creative writing, University of Toronto. And and let's hear Kateri. Kateri's reading. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Anna.
Do you want me share the screen now or later?
Well, maybe after I read it, do you think?
Okay.
Okay.
Sure.
So it's a great honor to have this poem included in the book. And Anna actually translated this a while ago, and it first appeared in the International Journal Poetry Sky, for which I was very grateful. I would just say by way of introduction to this that for some years I wrote about decorative arts for magazines and even for television a little bit. So I have a long-standing interest in the decorative arts from around the world, but particularly from China. And so this poem is called Guanyin Lamp, and was actually in a way based on a real lamp that I observed, but we can talk later about some of those details. So Guanyin Lamp. A Guanyin lamp left burning in a closed storefront. Light without mercy on your small right-hand finger, on your head and broken finger. Here's the boy, the girl, faces stroked by your robe. You're a hollow never filled, and your face is serene. The cries of the world, unheard behind plate glass. Dust-streaked kitsch, you dream of sound. I dream of our rescue. All that's empty was once filled past the brim. The fountains unstoppable, air, blood, song. If I could rub your cheek, place a finger on your brow, find scrolled below the lotus the poems of, or not a worker's lament. One of the numbered, innumerable, faces lowered, compassion cast in clay, the moon in tears. Blanched pomegranate at your feet, fish mid-leap, shipped by freighter, globe-poised Guanyin, unhearing, unbury me. Walk me through the flames. We'll emerge soft and fearless, with 1,000 arms each and a mouth for every wound. We'll perch on chemical clouds, rolling dragon dust, pain glazed from our lips, the planet run to extremes. An engine misfires. I rest my forehead on glass, moth-hearted, lost in adulthood, thirsty for light. All the cries of the world, something to sell, swallow, sorrow. Your uncontrolled kindness reigns on the void. So that is the poem. Anna, do you want to show on the screen, or did you want to ask a question, or
Okay.
should we talk?
Okay, let me share then. Okay, so this one. Okay, that one is Kate. Oh, let me open share sound. Okay, share sound. Okay, okay. So that is for Kate's the dragon fruit translation. So this is Kateri's Guanyin lamp. Yes, and when I immediately, right, when I saw the title, I immediately curious about how you see the Chinese traditional goddess image, right? And
Yeah.
how do you think it comforted, or for me, I feel that has some hopelessness, right? And you could you explain a
Yes.
little bit?
Well, I think the poem is, I mean, I think I'm trying to grapple with these ideas of consolation or a figure, what Guanyin represents traditionally, a figure who listens to the cries of the world. So I have that reference in there, the a figure of compassion and one who listens and takes in these cries. And so in a way, the lamp is behind glass in a storefront. So there is a sort of barrier between the speaker of the poem and this figure. And of course, the figure is also rendered in a sort of a decorative arts way. It has been turned into a lamp. Now, this is, it's something that it also speaks, I guess it's the poem I am trying to address, the sort of east-west kind of mutual interest or fascination, but also how that can sometimes become very reductive too. So, here is this figure. People might think, oh, this is a lovely piece of pottery, but they don't understand the religious, the spiritual significance. And there's so much to know. So the speaker here, is kind of almost admitting that they don't know, they sort of know what they don't know in a way. So there's a sort of a tentative movement towards trying to understand, I guess. And this is maybe addressing some of your themes of the evening in that way. But there is a lot of longing in the poem. And I think that is very relevant to this figure, what the figure represents. Yeah, so I mean, those are some observations I would make. Yeah.
Yes. When I translated it, I also see I can feel the feeling. It's like a hopeless kind of void, right? Even they had some like a Guanyin, like this goddess should be saved the world, right? Should be
Yeah.
saved the suffering, but still they had still like the hope is hanging there, right? So yeah, it's of course it depends it's a big question for poetry. It's difficult to answer this question. It really depends on each other, right? But yes, it's good to question. Good to have this question and to think about it, ponder about it. Even for me, because I live in China, then I came to Canada. I feel I face different religion or different faith or different beliefs, right? So I need to be more creative thinking, right? And be open, even or question my own background or question or so it's not just the how to say it's one way to accept, right? One way also to open accept, but still you need to question, not just take in everything, right? So yeah,
Yes.
you really need to know the behind the story, the meaning, or the culture, or everything.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's wonderful, Anna. And also, I think for me, it was just the beginning of trying to understand a little bit more about this figure and what the figure represents. And as someone who was baptized and raised to a certain age as Catholic, I certainly am familiar with the figure of Mary as a kind of figure offering consolation and so on, and even the iconography, if you will, around Mary. And I was so this was what was familiar to me, and then I realized that this really older figure in terms world historical terms, it's just very interesting for me. I mean, I think if I were to do another degree at some point, I would love to do comparative religious studies, because I found I just even in working on the poem, I was sort of reading a lot about Guanyin, and in different countries, different cultures, how this figure is represented and what the figure signifies, and it is different in different countries. So anyway, the poem just touches a little bit on that. You know, this is an enormous subject in a way, but what it's trying to do, I guess, is to suggest that spiritual searching, and it is a bit unanswered at the end. But as you say, poets ask questions, and they don't necessarily answer them. So that is the poem from the book. Do I have a moment to read another one?
Sure, yeah.
Okay. So I could read something from Siren, which is my most recent book. Now, I actually do have some haiku in this book. So we mentioned that at the beginning of the evening. Maybe I could read a couple of them. So let's see. I actually have several pages of them, but anyway, in a book that mostly contains the Ghazal form. So they're right in the middle. There's this sort of mysterious section of haiku in a way. We just put it right in the middle of the book. So I could read this one. What are you wearing? Something that breathes, a dress made of living doves. And then I think I will read this one for Robarts, which is a description of Robarts Library, really, which is a place that is brutalist architecture, very imposing, but I feel very sentimental about it because I studied at the University of Toronto, and I'm sort of involved with it now to some extent too. So again, cherry blossoms blush at stern library scholars. Pink kisses concrete. And then I will just read this last one, which was based on an observation on long public transit commutes, specifically the Islington subway station. Rain cannot dampen the pigeons of Islington. Party, platform 5. So it's not; these are not necessarily really representative of the main thrust of the book, but it's a different mode. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a different style, right? Different mode, yeah.
And I just want to thank Anna. Also, thank you, Anna, for coming in to speak with the students at the University of Toronto, Mississauga. She came in to speak with them when we were studying haiku, and this was when you were running this haiku project in Mississauga with postcards, haiku on postcards, and so Anna gave a great presentation to the students, and then was encouraging them to write their own haiku and send them in on these postcards. It was a great project. So I was just thinking of that in honor of that. But that was great. Thanks, Anna. That was when she was the poet laureate of Mississauga. Yeah.
Thank you for invitation. Yeah. Okay, now we will move on to next, Richard Greene. Richard Greene is the author of 4 books of poetry, and his collection Boxing the Compass received the Governor General Literature Award in 2010, and his most recent collection, Dentist's House, was published in 2013 and was highly praised by reviewers, including George Eliot Clarke, who referred to it as a masterpiece. He is also a well-known biographer, critic, and editor. Yeah, Richard also have his new book published this year or last year. Richard, so let's welcome Richard to read his poem and talk a little bit.
I am so very grateful to be here, and congratulations to you on the making of a very, very beautiful, outstanding book. You've done spectacular work here, and all of us who are reading, I'm sure, feel exactly the same way, that if we were to have a translator, we're very lucky to have you. So hats off to you, Anna. The poem I'd like to read from the anthology is Window, because it's an autumnal poem. I wrote it years ago, And I brought it to a workshop that Allan and I belonged to. And I think Allan must have helped me a bit with it. And I do recall that an old friend named Sheldon Zittner got me to change some lines. Anyway, it's me thinking about autumn and not liking it very much.
Richard, do you want me to share the poem now or later?
You can share it now if you like.
Okay, because this poem is very, I think if people see it, it's better, right? See the words.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. Let me see if I can. Okay, here. So Richard has 4 poems in Mirrors and Windows. Each poem is so differently. So let me see if I have share. Okay, share sounding. Okay, I have. So yeah, you can start now.
Okay, it's called Window. The window gathered light from the sky and argued for life in a bad time, as amid gesticulating boughs of a stripped maple, its crooked fingers raised in bitter emphasis, an unseen orator spoke in mime. The wind exhaled October like a threat and stirred the leaves to riot that merely loitered in their discontent. The house itself leaked spirit through the roof and walls, received the cold airs passively, those deputations bearing seasonal warrants of arrest. But the heart, not ready to renounce its true estate, saw the sky framed like a constitution, where the window gathered light.
Yes, it's very powerful, especially the ending, right?
Oh.
I never thought about that. So this, I really like this poem. Really. Okay, we will discuss later your other poems. So you wanted to share other poem?
Sure. Okay, that's cool. Yeah.
So
yeah.
I will stop sharing. You want to read the other poems, right? Or
okay, yeah, that would be great.
Okay, good.
Yeah, so the first poem, the 2 related poems. The first one I published a few years ago is called Cannibal Rats. And that's a funny title for a poem, but if you recall, there was a big fuss in the news about 8 or 9 years ago about a ship, derelict in St. John's, Newfoundland Harbor, that was full of rats that were eating each other, and then it was dragged out to sea, and that was the last that was heard of it. So, and as I come from Newfoundland, I take a special interest in strange ships. Cannibal Rats. Blue steel rusted by the sea. It was worth only its salvage. Years of South and North Poles eating at her, while the rats, who had run aboard on mooring ropes, were eating son and daughter bred inside her belly. Generations of need in the galley and the staterooms. No one wanted to own her dereliction in this changed town. So she sat there, the Lyubov Orlova. Cash, from Hibernia and Terra Nova, canceled out what we knew about shipwreck. Green water running on the slanted deck. A wooden ship broached to and on her beam ends, remembered then in song with nothing mends. Revenant myself, I may not cavil about how art and memory unravel. Followed my chances on the mainland, got tenure, found the taxpayer's open hand, and am now a Jonah where I was born, confused by both the fog and the foghorn. Returning to my peculiar Nineveh, I have no message. I've just been away. A tugboat dragged that ghost ship out to sea. Lost it when a rope broke or they let it free just outside this country's jurisdiction. The Irish papers loved the rodent fiction and supposed it landing soon in Galway, full of cannibal rats looking for new prey. It joined all that history of drowned fleets without song or poem, but a million tweets. That particular poem is obviously set in St. John's, which greatly changed from a place of shipwreck and sort of hanging in there to very briefly a wealthy place with the oil industry and the reference to a couple of oil fields in there. But in that poem, I have the figure of Jonah, and Jonah is really a a fascinating figure. He is absolutely the funniest thing in the Bible. If you take half an hour and go reread the book of Jonah and just let it be funny, it is hysterically so. Jonah is an old grump. He doesn't want God to be nice to anybody, especially not those people in Nineveh. He wants Nineveh to be destroyed. No, he does not wish to go preach for the repentance of Nineveh. Not a chance. And so he runs off and goes to sea to get away from anything God may want him to do, and goes way out into the sea. And there's a storm. The sailors realize, hey, you're running for God. We're going to sink. Sorry, bud. Flick, out he goes. And of course, as the sea monster swallows him, brings him back, disgorges him in front of Nineveh, and he goes, all right, God, I'll preach. And so he preaches, and they're all converted. And then there's a further grumpy scene with funny lines about cattle at the end of the book. But I always found that an amusing parallel to my own relationship to the province I was born in. And not that I'm Jonah, but that the idea of Jonah amuses me and gives me something to play with. So Jonah popped up in that poem. So, and I'm not a prolific poet. I really don't write very much. But lately I wrote a few things with Jonah as my, not exactly persona, more alter ego, because it's more someone I've dreamt up. He's absolutely not me, but he's kind of fun to play with. Although in the next poem, I did in fact do what he did. I bought a house on the internet, but we won't talk about that. Jonah buys a house. It is the pandemic year, and Jonah has bought a house on the internet, there on the corner of Gower and Cochrane, in Nineveh's historic core, streets that meet at an oblique angle so that the house, filling its little lot, is nothing like a square, more a rhombus of 3 stories. His sister, who never had his reasons to leave, found a shark of a real estate agent with ethics rare for her species, and they did the looking. Clapboard walls brown beside jelly bean fellows. The purple, yellow, pink, and pea green suggest sobriety, the tongue-tied dignity of a prophet between employments. Its rooftop deck shakes underfoot, looks out the Narrows to the Atlantic, where from time to time a pothead or minky breaches. He waves to it for old time's sake, finds himself forgotten by a friend, perhaps ghosted, as those who go far usually come home in some kind of disgrace. There he was, disgorged on the waterfront, and no way of accounting for himself through all that missing time.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you, thank you. So now I wanted to share a screen and just quickly mention Richard's 2 other poems. And I know another people said you are master of the tether rhythm form, right? So, and when I tried to translate your poem, I didn't know this form. So later on, I'll find out. And also, it's very difficult to translate it. Like, could you explain a little bit the forms? I know some Chinese people maybe don't know the form.
Sure. And I will say that in an Italian high school room, I was chided by an Italian school kid for getting the form wrong, and he was right. But what I did was I made it a bit more English than it would be in Italian. An Italian person writing terza rima would probably write 11 syllables per line. I pulled it back to 10. And the form is the one that Dante uses in the Divine Comedy. And so it's 3-line stanzas, and it's got a sort of a funny line, so a funny, let's try it. It's a little easier. Where will I find it? This one here will probably work for us. The 3rd stanza. The 1st and the 3rd line rhyme. The middle line signals the 1st and 3rd of the next stanza. Then this one will signal the first and third of this stanza. Then this rhyme will signal first and third of the next one, the middle one, and so on. And it's a traditional form. I mean, lots of people work in it. T.S. Eliot had a go at it. Lots of people do. At the time, I was fairly clear in the poem that I was not reproducing what Dante did. And indeed, that would be a complete fake. And the title is meant to indicate a fake, because Dante's house in Florence is a complete fake. It's a museum that was built about 100 years ago, and they put stuff in it that's more or less like what Dante might have seen in a place where Dante might have been. And that's seemed to me a good metaphor for me trying to write in terza rima, because it belongs to 800 years ago. It belongs to a way of thinking that I don't share, but my God, it was fun to do.
Yeah. For me, I also need to apologize because I couldn't translate it in this kind of form.
Of course
So
not.
I didn't rhyme.
If there was a trophy for weirdness, it would go to the terza rima form.
I couldn't find the rhyme, right? Find the exact
Oh gosh, no.
rhyme. Yeah. Anyway, but I like this poem because why? Because like at the very beginning, you said you think of the essence of the only art, right? And the pita, right?
Yeah.
Piata, and at the end, and you said the grave beauty and the stone. It's even they are different, but now it's remain the same, right? It's a hold the blast. So for me, I'm thinking yes, it's like okay, Piata is a tragedy. It's kind of a very sad thing, right? Tragedy, right? But we can see when we still like why people go to see this kind of art or music, because we want to we we see this, then we have more compassion, right?
Mm-hmm.
And find the humanity there. So that's why I feel, and so that's why many people still line up to visit this, and especially the chaos, especially when the world is not peaceful, right? Because you said the security man, right, watch carefully, right? So it's especially when it's unsafe and terrible time. People still searching for hope, searching for light, right? Like Kateri's poem, searching for light, and Kate's poem, right? To taste the light, right? So I said, yeah, it's like even we have different religion or different culture background, we have common, right? Compassion, humanity, and we all searching for peace and look for the peace. And in this book, mirrors and windows. Okay, let me stop the sharing. Mirrors and windows, like George Eliot Clarke write the introduction. He said, he said like translation is a necessary diplomacy. And this to build the understanding and build the understanding and exchange our idea, and then unite us. So it's like a path to peace, right? So yeah, I really thank you all for sharing your poems, and all these poems touch about the humanity, touch about the peace and our common human, like common uh, desire, hope, and yeah. Now I want to share one of my poem in this book, and it's inspired from the translations. And this is inspired by Priscilla opera. So I translated a poem. It's the same title, Spirit Tree. Spirit Tree, after Priscilla opera. In Prospect Cemetery, among poplar, cedar, and maple trees, I hope you found yours. the healing from heaven. Here, in another city, from my window, I can see a full-grown willow. 10 years ago, only a little twig. Someone dropped in the valley. I remember 2 years ago, the year you passed. Lightning hit the willow and split her into halves. I worried and almost let go, but the next year, from the open wound, she grew new twigs. Have I found my spirit tree? I check every day. Last year, when I passed by the willow, the breeze blew. New green leaves touched me as if a soft hand. When winter comes, I collect all falling slim leaves, so much like lips. I let them rest in books of poems by you, each clinging to another, whispering a forest of stories. So I want to use this poem as a tribute to Priscilla Opera. Her life was ended very young, and she is a very wonderful poet and a wonderful person. And before she died, she still tried to combine anthology for cancer care, anthology. So after she died, and we have the book launch, and my poem for my sister, it's in that book. So I'm very touched by her. So and when I read her poem, Spirit Tree, but at the very end, she said she needed kneel down to the tree. So it's like I mean, everyone tried to search something, try to find the hope, try to find the consolation, and especially right now, right, COVID, right, like the lockdown, and everyone is isolated. So we need to build the connection. We need to build the culture cross understanding and exchange as well. So yeah, that's what I want to share. Okay, now we want to open up the floor, and let me put the guest speaker all like as a spotlight. So and if you want to ask a question, you can ask us and have fun and enjoy it. So you can unmute yourself or raise your hand to ask a question. Let me, okay, they have who, Allan Brice. Okay, yeah, okay, Jonah have some question. Let me find Allan first. Allan, where are you? Could you add yourself?
Okay, Aaron first.
You can add yourself as a spotlight. I couldn't see. Okay, let me see this way. Gallery. Okay, gallery. Okay, now I saw you. Okay, add your spotlight. Okay, now, yeah. Okay, if you have a question, you can raise your hand, unmute yourself, ask our question. Okay? Oh, someone said, could I read a poem in Chinese? Oh, do you want?
Yeah.
Okay, I will read one. Okay, let me read one. That one is inspired by Al Morris' poem. I wouldn't read English. I will read Chinese now. Al Morris, because Al Morris in a poem, there is a line said, you too are orphans. You too are orphans. So I said, yes, each poem is like orphan. So I said, we too are orphans. So in my poem, I said, we too are orphans. But okay, now I will read Chinese. Okay, it's not very long, so I will read it. 夜行的列车，最后一次通话，我们谈到天气，谈到风景，春天终于来了。我开始原谅漫长的冬季，并且刻意不提到那些寒冷的日子，诗来取暖。我轻描淡写另一个时区，红梅也许开放。我们都是孤儿，记得18岁生日收到一本日记， 如此精致和美丽。我写下了手记，只为你保留。然而，我的笔记没有编得更好，我的诗也没能更成熟。于是，日记一直封装着，最终丢失。诗是绳索，为失落者放下来。我们的通话以玛丽·奥利弗的诗句结束。窗外，火车来了又去，我看见带翅膀的影子，那些羽毛只在梦中翱翔。That's it. Okay, so yeah, I think some people have questions. Thank you, thank you. Okay, so if you have questions, please, yeah, raise your hand or ask. Yeah.
Yeah, Anna.
Yeah. Okay, sure.
So could I share your book, my Chinese English poetry column? I think it's nice to share everyone about the poetry life. You remember? I did a very nice.
Which one? Which poem?
Life.
Oh, life. Okay, life in the book, already in the book. So yeah.
Yeah,
but,
I share.
Okay, you can share.
Yeah,
because,
so everyone say it's very nice. It's Chinese and English poetry recital.
yeah.
Today I only share the English one, so this is Chinese.
Yes. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
So everyone can see how I put.
Okay. You need to open share the sound. Otherwise, no.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I have to share the sound.
Yeah. Otherwise, you couldn't.
Yeah, I share again.
Okay.
Yeah, I forget put the share sound. Yeah, okay, right now. Okay.
Yeah. Meanwhile, I will ask like our guest poets a question later.
How unfair you thought I'd become when you turned 21, because you lost a few dreams, but I stayed awake when you were out late. I was the stars till you turned 28, and when you found your love, the one, I was glimmer in the eye, the blue sky, the sun. Then you turned 31. I became cloud, thunder, and shower. There weren't enough minutes to put in your hour. You forgot how to dance in the rain. Till you turned 40, all you did was complain. Then you took off your shoes and went back to the sand. I was now the warmth of your child's hand. At 43, you spent more time with me. You began to understand. And when you stood 50 years old, you stayed warm to me, even though at times I was cold. How close we grew when you turned 62. The breeze was I that hung your grandchild's kite in the sky. And I'm sorry I made you sad when I took the one away. But I was proud when you pushed aside that cloud and cradled me in the sun.
Okay, the sounding was dropped. Okay, thank you.
Writer
Yeah.
introduce and Anna introduce. The writer is Millie. She from university.
The reciter, yeah, reciter.
So also I post Anna another poem because of the wind. If you have time, I can share with you.
I
want?
think okay. I think I can share the link for them, or you can post your link on the chat room, okay? Because otherwise it take, you know what I mean? you can post the link in the chat room so people can go to take a look of that. And otherwise, we will open for other people if they have a question. Or I also have one question for the guest poets. Okay, so
Okay.
yeah, okay. And because I didn't ask what's the next for you, right? So how about we take turn to say what's the next, or like I know Rachel Greene, you didn't introduce your new book, so maybe it's chance to for you to.
I last published a book in 2013, and a new collection of poems is creeping along, and I don't know. I need 10 more pages for it to actually be the least a book can be, which I think is 64 pages. So I'll just sort of wait for poems to show up. It's like looking out your window at the bus stop and wondering who gets off. Most of them are strangers, but now and again, there's someone you can run out and talk to.
Okay, thank you. Okay, how about Kate?
So I have a book I've completed that's been bouncing around from publisher to publisher. I got lucky and Copper Canyon said I was shortlisted, but then they rejected me. So I have a wonderful, well, I shouldn't say wonderful, I have a wonderful feeling in my heart about the book, but it's bouncing around and hasn't found a home yet. So in the meantime, I'm writing a bit of a memoir, which is new for me to write prose, and just pecking away at poems. But the book that I completed several years ago, Allan edited, and I love it, but I don't know if it'll find a place in the world. And if not, you know, there was something to be gained in just writing it, compiling it, and getting it ready. So we'll see what happens with it.
Okay, good luck. Yeah.
Thanks.
How about the Kateri?
Well, I have been writing over the last few years since Siren came out. I have some of the poems have appeared here and there, a couple in the Walrus. I considered reading one of those tonight, but then I didn't really didn't really feel we had the time, and a couple in an American online journal, for which I recorded readings of them too, called the journal's called The Night Heron Barks. And so that it's kind of fun to send your work to other countries too, and work with editors. I've often found that relationship can be very interesting too, because you know they're not really familiar with you, or you know, so it's kind of exciting when that happens actually. So I'm slowly working on the next collection. I actually have a working title, but I'm a little superstitious about saying it. So, but it's a sort of helps to be a sort of central organizing principle, maybe in a way. So yeah, it's coming along. I did find that with the pandemic, I had, I mean, I have 3 children. They're all a little bit older. In fact, the oldest is in second year university, but it was 5 people in a small place, 24/7 for the longest time. And so I really had to find ways of trying to almost barricade myself from the constant presence of others, and not entirely successfully all the time either, but and the sort of the mothering that I had to do over the last this time has been kind of complex in different ways, you know, so that has actually taken up quite a bit of my time, but and sort of emotional resources and energy and so on, but yes, I do have something very, you know, it's coming along. Yeah.
Okay, good. Allan, how about you?
My book Wind For is still quite new. It came out in the summer, and it's been very well received. I even got a couple of very nice reviews of it. I want to take that book places. It looks as though restrictions are being lifted in most places in Canada. I particularly enjoy going out to British Columbia, and when the Long Bond was still new last year, I had a reading tour all planned in the last 2 weeks of March to go out to BC, and of course that had to be canceled. I did a couple of those readings online, but I'm really anxious, as I know the other poets are, all of us, to be in the same room and feel the vibe that you can only feel when you're in the physical presence of your audience. And so I'm looking forward to going out to British Columbia in March of next year, when it's still winter here but spring there. And in the meantime, through the winter, I hope to get a number of other readings. I have a couple lined up of course, in Toronto, near where I live, but other places in Ontario as well. I'd love to get to Ottawa, Kingston, Montreal, but it's still kind of iffy and cloudy, and yet we're in the situation where you have to ordinarily plan quite a ways ahead to get something lined up if you're traveling. So still to come, but I'm going to be working on it. And I do have about half of my next book written, but that's going to be a while before that comes out. I need to concentrate on the new book in the next year or so.
Okay, good. Andy has raised your hand. Okay, we welcome you to say something or ask a question.
I'm a lay person, just have this curiosity here. Thank you for taking me on a voyage, in the new space that's totally away from the mundane life. And the word kept coming to my mind is alchemist. You people are like alchemists who turn something so mundane, so ordinary into something so beautiful, inspiring. That's the feeling I get from listening to you. So my curious question is, when did you start writing poem, and when do you decide to write a poem? I guess the question, when you first start writing when you're younger, what made you to start writing? And then when you start writing a poem like the Dragon Fruit, what things like that, what made you doing that, write something about your son in BC, the type of thing? I'm just curious. Anybody can give me an answer, I guess.
Okay, I will jump in first because I always say poetry changed me. I never know I can be a poet at the very beginning, right? So when I came to Canada, I only write a poem in English to improve my English. just a way to, because a poem you post on the online, right? People can comment, people can give you a suggestion. If you write a longer, nobody read it, right? Only poem people will give you, because a poem everyone read it differently. So there's some debate, right? Everyone give you different suggestions, different comments. So it's a great way to learn English, to help people to get a feedback, right? So, but eventually I was lucky. Then I won an award. But it's a true story. It's a tragedy. So, and I wrote that because I feel so sad. So why I think poetry saved me? Because all my poems it's from my heart. It's not from what I learned or academic side or what I learned. It's not the play. It's just I wanted to do something. I needed to do something. So that's why I started writing poetry. Yeah, that's what. Okay, I will let other people to share. Yeah.
Okay, well, I will say I started writing poetry at a very early age. I think I remember writing a poem when I was 8, and being very conscious of the fact that it was a poem, but maybe more when I was 10, I entered a poem, the teacher entered the poem into this contest for students all across Northern Ontario. Was run by the Northern Ontario Council of Teachers of English. Anyway, this poem won an award for my grade level, so this was very encouraging, and sort of like winning awards. So anyway, a little misleading maybe, because you could sort of think, oh, this poetry win awards. However, I really I had a journal and notebooks, and I mean, you couldn't stop me from writing when I was a child. So I wrote, and then later on, a little later on, when I was like 13, published in adult literary magazines, journals, and so on. So I got a very, very early start. But then after doing degrees at university, during that time I was writing and publishing in student journals and occasionally in professional journals, if you will. After that, I gradually stopped. So I have this sort of 15 or so year hiatus when I just wasn't writing poetry. I was, as I was making references to earlier, I was writing about decorative arts. I kind of had to make a living. I first worked as an editor, and then I started writing about decorative art. So poetry just got sort of tamped down and it started to seem like another world. So it wasn't until I had children that I started writing poetry again. So children, as listening to my kids acquire language and the way that they do, and the kind of coming up with interesting images, or not hearing a word properly, making up their own words, all of that sort of wordplay, I found very stimulating, and I was running around writing down what they said. And this was the beginning of starting to write again. And many people think if you have children, well, then they would say, oh, you stopped writing because you had children, because you were so busy. And I said, no. The children brought me back to poetry. And I think it was also the big life event, the big change, finally, belatedly, of having 1 and then 2 and then 3 children. It just, it was very elemental to sort of get to grips with life in a way. And so these are the contributing elements. So then I came back to it. So having had this early start, I failed entirely to do something impressive with it after a certain point, and I had to come back and re-enter it. But anyway, here I am again. Yeah.
Okay. Kate? Yeah.
I'll jump in because I feel like there's some similar strains with Kateri. I feel like I just started writing, when I learned language, I started writing in poetry. I have, when my parents moved from the house I grew up in, they had crates of journals. I just spilled my life into journals, and it just came out in poetry. And I remember in grade 6, I wasn't particularly sporty, and I had a male teacher, and I was never kind of ever noticed for anything. And then he had a little poetry contest, and we each read our little poem about fall colors. And I remember he cried, and I remember thinking, oh my God, I can do something, And I feel like my relationship with him changed after that, and my relationship with the power of words changed after that. And I thought, this is my way, And so I always wrote poetry. And when I had 3 children, it was sort of the opposite. My poetic self would be so busy taking care of 3 kids that I wouldn't write in the day. And then my little inner artist would wake me up in the middle of the night. Like, all these things are in your head. You better get them down. So I wrote a lot of poems. Maybe my first 3 books were written in the middle of the night, like little geysers or, little boils that burst in the night. And I just sort of quickly get it, on the paper. And some of those poems just wrote themselves. So it was interesting how if you don't have time, they percolate inside and then they just come out. And then I started writing, doing writing workshops where, I'm writing along with the participants, which is magic. We inform each other and the sparks fly, and poems, the raw material of poems get produced. So I just find I'm on fire for that. So I would say poetry's always been my lifeline, and where I feel like I don't fit here and there, and I'm not an administrator, and I didn't particularly stay in academia, like poetry's been my language, So I love when I find kindred spirits and others that enjoy the language or share the language or wade around in that same pool of language. So, and in translation is fascinating to me too. Just how the essence of something can be translated into another language. I think Mary Oliver says it's not what the words say, it's how they make you feel. And even hearing Anna read in Chinese, I have no idea what the poem was about. The sounds and the music and the intonations and the levels, like I felt something. And then I can only imagine in translation how that would lift it to another layer. Anyway, I could go on, but I'll just mute myself here.
Okay, to other guests.
Actually, if you forgive me for a moment, I'm going to turn off my camera because I have to plug in my computer. The battery is dying. I'll be back in about 2 seconds. Talk amongst yourselves.
Okay, Allan. Okay, Allan.
All right, it falls to me. It's fascinating to me how people's stories with poetry, their relation can differ widely in a lot of cases, and yet there are some common threads among us. But for me, I think it's more unusual than for most, because I came to poetry pretty gradually and late, later than most do. I always loved to read, but it was on the side of my life. I was a science student, and back in my day, you know, they had a literary club in my high school. It was all girls, and as a male, I wouldn't dream of you know, being part of that. But I loved reading poetry, and you know, discovering it in my English classes, and eventually I realized that was literature was more interesting to me than the sciences. I changed in university and went on to study literature into graduate school. But I wrote pretty sporadically and not very well, actually. It was only when I had changed careers and had a child. The first poem that I wrote that was any good was about my little daughter when she was 3 years old. It's in my selected poems. I had kind of a baptism of fire, changing from you know, academia into the business world and the world of information technology, which is how I made my living, like Anna, something in common there. But it enabled me, after I got into it, to after I walked out the door, you know, after the 9 to 5 was over, the evening was mine. Weekends were mine to pursue my literary interests, and it gradually gained momentum. So although I wasn't doing this, you know, as a teenager or even in my 20s to a significant extent, finally it became the center of my life, and has you know, for a few decades since then, and always will. It was, I guess, waiting to happen, but in my case, it was a delayed phenomenon. I don't know. Looking back, well, I don't generally look back unless I get some kind of a prompt at one of Katie's workshops, more or less telling me, write something about my childhood or that, and I might come up with something then.
Yeah. I do admire you. I understand, because it's very tough for me as well, right? You sometimes struggle between like your daily job and and the computer and my computer and daily job, then like the poetry. Yeah, sometimes you really struggle, but sometimes I feel lucky too, right? At least you have a daily job, right? So sometimes, you know, it's a balance.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about money, and I know some people who you know, were so dedicated to poetry that really they had lived in poverty. They didn't develop a career or a practical source of income, and there's no such thing as patrons. There's only the grant system, you know, arts councils and so on, and that is a difficult path to take, to be constantly looking for for income. So yeah, that was a plus. And also, I don't know if this would apply to many other people, but I found that learning time management, project management, problem solving, dealing with stress and so on, it really paid off in a big way for me. Not so maybe so much in writing poetry, but everything else in the literary life. The editing, I got into publishing, and you know, last year I have my own little press. I published 12 books, you know, just by myself, and it came easily. I think I can thank, you know, being in the high pressure kind of business world, something transferred over to there. Although I don't think any of that shows in my poetry. I only have one humorous poem about my IT life, making fun of it. A couple of nightmares I had about it, and after I retired. So I don't know. Maybe that's still to come. Poetry about computers, and can be done. Poetry, you can write a poem about any subject. It just should be a good poem, good enough to make that subject interesting, as uninteresting as it may seem to be in and of itself, through the power of language and the imagination, and just caring about the subject, having some passion.
Okay, now let's hear Richard's finals.
I wish I had as inspirational a story. When I was in high school, a friend of mine got into Robert Frost and started writing poems and songs and things. This just seemed like a good thing to be doing. So I had a little go at it myself. And over time, got worse before I got better. And you know, the more I needed to say something, the worse the poems got. And in time, you know, it got to be, you know, okay. And I love writing poems. I love when they show up. I don't write many.
Okay, yeah. I remember, like, Richard Greene's Allan recommended me to contact you. Like in 2011, I hosted the PK Page Trust Founding Poetry Reading event, and Allan and recommended me to invite you to join. And I remember the first time I met you, I said, "Oh, you're so gentleman." You're so humble. Yeah, I never because I didn't met a professor before.
There's lots of reasons to be humble, and I got them.
I'm going to jump in here because there hasn't been any mention that you are a biographer in your academic world, and your biography of the novelist Graham Greene has received a great deal of attention and praise. I guess the question I would have to you, or I wonder, you know, with the amount of time you need to spend in research, and I know you travel as well when you're working on a biography, do you feel that is crowding out or making it even more challenging for you to write the poetry that you want to write, as well as doing all of this other work and teaching?
Yeah, it's a totally different mode, right?
Yeah. That's a sort of a funny story. I don't want to derail the discussion, but I think writing poetry taught me how to write a good biography. You know, like you know, just little things like how to open a chapter, you know, how to end a chapter, you know, a good phrase, and that writing poetry equipped me for that. I will also say that some of my long poems, I've had 2 long poems, both are wedded to biographical projects. One called Over the Border, that was in that book box in the Compass, it was me crawling around the United States on Greyhounds and Amtrak, going from archive to archive, looking for stuff on Greene. And then later on, when I wrote Dante's House, I was very absorbed in work I was doing on the British poet Edith Sitwell, and she keeps popping in and out of the story. So they don't, there's something about writing the poems that is more me, but when I'm doing anything in particular, you know, that's the most important thing, whatever you're at the moment. I think I like the independent voice of poetry, that you're doing your own thing. And yeah, anyway, thank you for the kind words. It's fun to write a biography, but if you write too many of them, you run out of lifespan. A person better stick to poetry. 10 years on a book like that is enough to run out your clock in a hurry.
I just want to say, add something, picking up on what Kate had said about when you have children, when you have the time to write, or how can you possibly write? Because my first book was called Reporting from Night, because that was the only time I had to write. So very much like Kate, I would finally get the children to sleep, creep up to the computer, turn on the computer, I was barely awake, and then take those notes that I'd scribbled down during the day and write. And so this was the only way at that point in my life that was possible. It's not quite that tormented now, but there are obstacles very often for writers with children, and in many cases the stereotypical thing still applies, women writers with children. But anyway, I just wanted to add that. What you said.
Thank you. That's fascinating. And I think Linda have a question.
Who? Let me. I couldn't see. Who have question?
Linda.
Linda. Oh, Linda, do you have a question? You can unmute yourself to ask a question. Linda.
Hi. Yes. Hi, Anna.
Yeah,
so, hi, I'm Linda. I'm so happy here. So this is the first time I joined your meeting, your gathering. It's so wonderful you have me here. And this is the first time I know Anna for the first time too. So I'm so happy to know you in person. And I'm so happy to join this kind of gathering with so many points. And I can learn so much from this. I'm not a poet now, and I'm learning. This is a very good opportunity. So I and my husband are writing novels. So it's published. And once I come by the library, I saw our novel in Toronto Library. So this is in Chinese, and we have some points in Chinese in the novel. But some of our friends and say, it's pity that your novel is in Chinese. Can you write some novel in English? So we start to write novel in English, and but we also think that we should know how to write poem in English and put it in our novel. So this is a very good opportunity for us to learn, and I appreciate this very much. And I'm so happy to know all of you guys here, and it's so wonderful. And it's such a great gathering. I'm so happy to be here tonight. So that's what I want to say.
Okay, thank you. Yes, and Linda bought the book, and the book is still on the mail, delayed. I don't know why. Still on delayed.
It doesn't matter because I think this is a special time. As long as I can have the book, I'm so expected to have it, and so many great points I can learn. I can see it now today. So, and then I read the poem, and then I will have a very special feeling when I read the poem.
Thank you, thank you. And Joanna bought 8 books. She also did another for she have people to recite the poem and make the make post blogs for the poem and in both Chinese and English. They recite both Chinese and English. So yeah, and other people wanted to help. Yeah. Okay.
So next time if you gather again, so maybe I can recite one of the poems.
Oh, okay, sure. I think I will have one in January next year. So it's I have another one is for USA poets because in this book, right, we have USA poets, right? I needed to organize for USA poets. Then another one is for Chinese poets. So oh my God, yeah, okay, yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. So I think because now it's a little bit late, I don't want everyone, spend Jack too late. So I wanted to say thank you to everyone and for joining us, and also especially thank you our 4 guest poets, and also Andy for our co-host CPAC. So hopefully next year you'll co-host again, Andy.
Yes, we'll do that. It will be a pleasure. This is really a pleasure to be here. My job is very busy. I don't get to go away from that world to disappear into this wonderful space and love to come back. And this is my utopia life. Yeah, it's great.
Okay. So wonderful. So I want to say goodbye to everyone and thank you all. And
thank you.
One more.
Thank
Sorry.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
See you next time. Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Anna. Anna.
Bye-bye.
Have you signed the book?
Pardon me?
Have you signed on the book?
Yes. I
if
signed.
Yeah. It would be wonderful if all the points can sign on it.
It's not possible because there are some poets already died in the book. Yeah, but very famous poets, but not full, and some Canadian poets, some Chinese poets. Yeah, it's very okay. Yeah, maybe later if we have more time open up, then we have people get together. Then you can ask each contributor to sign, right? When we have
yeah. When can we meet in person? It will be wonderful.
When we have an event meeting in person, you can bring the book, then ask people to sign, right?
Oh, yeah, that's very good.
I'll be happy to sign.
Yeah, they will be happy to sign for you.
Yeah, be happy to read or just sign, whatever. Happy to hear other people from the anthology reading. And it's great that you're carrying on and organizing more events, Anna. I just want to throw that in before I say goodbye and thank you again.
Okay, no problem. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, bye-bye.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Anna. It was very lovely evening. Wonderful. And thank you again. I'm going to go.
Okay, bye-bye.
It was a great pleasure. And I hope people do pick up copies of this lovely book. Thank you again. Good night.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Good night.